Released alongside 80s arcade classics such as Pac-Man and Space Invaders, Spy Hunter is a perfect example of what the golden age of gaming has to offer. Simple and addictive gameplay that's easy to pick up and play, yet difficult to master. It's pretty straightforward. You earn points by racing your tricked-out sports car death machine down a never-ending freeway, destroying enemy vehicles and rescuing civilians along the way. As years went on, the video game market crashed, but Spy Hunter continued on. The series received numerous sequels, reboots, and of course, a failed film adaptation. Today we're going to take a look at the film's origins, see what it might have been, and try to find out what happened to it. This is Canceled Video Game Movies, Spy Hunter. While the original Spy Hunter remains as timeless as ever, the series was eventually rebooted by Midway in 2001. The reboot took full advantage of the power that the PS2, Xbox, and GameCube had to offer. The reboot featured modern graphics, a fleshed-out story, and a soundtrack by the band Saliva. Yeah, remember them? Neither do I. Spy Hunter 2001 got some decent reviews, but all in all, it was greeted with a fairly mediocre reception. Despite this, Midway still released a sequel, Spy Hunter 2, in 2003, to a slightly worse reception. Not letting poor reviews slow them down, Midway began production on yet another sequel, only this one was going to be different.
Well then, looks like I'll just be kicking your ass in a more hands-on style.
With video game technology getting more and more advanced with each passing console generation, Midway thought that the time was right to experiment with a new medium blending format. A format that would combine video games and film in a way that had never been done before. Midway's plan was to develop its new and existing properties like The Suffering, Vin Diesel's The Wheelman, and of course, Spy Hunter into video game movie hybrids. While none of this actually came to fruition, the concept was going to see movies and games tie directly into one another like never before. Through a recently signed licensing deal with Universal Pictures, development of the Spy Hunter cinematic gaming universe began. One entry being Spy Hunter Nowhere to Run, and the other being Spy Hunter the movie. One of those would spend 15 years in development hell until it was eventually canceled. Fresh off of his stint as one of the worst-looking CGI characters in history, a then not quite as famous Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson was set to star as secret agent Alex Decker.
He's an ex-fighter pilot who now works for the government, and he's the best of the best. He is a spy hunter.
With stylish action director John Woo driving the project and a rumored budget of $90 million, Spy Hunter began production in 2003. As with any film, even with all the star power and special effects in the world, it's only as good as its script. Spy Hunter was having a rough go in that department. Prior to John Woo joining the project, its script was being handled by Freddy vs. Jason writers Damian Shannon and Mark Swift. Shortly after Woo joined, Shannon and Swift were out, and Ready Player One writer Zach Penn was brought in. Penn had to rewrite the entire script, which delayed the release of the movie by another year, pushing its release date to summer 2006. Penn spent just under a year working on the script, until he also left the project. This has got to be a bad omen, right? Not giving up yet, Universal delayed Spy Hunter again and brought in Stuart Beattie to rewrite the script for the third time. Ironically enough, Beattie also has 2 other canceled video game adaptations under his belt. Anyway, this third production delay did more than just push back the film's target release date. It also caused both John Woo and Dwayne Johnson to leave the project due to scheduling conflicts. Woo would still go on to work with Midway on the video game Stranglehold. And as far as The Rock, well, at least he didn't have to star in some crummy video game.
Would you guys believe I'm just here to rotate the tires?
Oh, right. So where does this leave the other piece of Midway's hybrid media experiment, Spy Hunter Nowhere to Run? Since the movie was going, nowhere, and Midway was on the verge of bankruptcy, the development team at Terminal Reality had to piece together what they had into something that could hopefully be considered cohesive without the movie. It was released in the fall of 2006. Yeah, that's pretty rough. Nowhere to Run was the worst reviewed game in the Spy Hunter series at that point, but it did star The Rock, so if anything, it's probably the best look we have into what the movie might have been.
So tell me,
Does the rocket launcher come standard with this thing, or is it only an option?
Even without the video game tie-in, the film soldiered on. After John Woo, Dwayne Johnson, and writer Stuart Beattie had all left the project, production came to a complete standstill. Until 2007, when Paul Anderson was brought on to write and direct the film. No, not the 5-time Oscar nominee Paul Thomas Anderson. I mean Paul W.S. Anderson, the video game movie maestro behind Mortal Kombat, Resident Evil, and the upcoming Monster Hunter film. Yeah, that one ought to be a treat. Anderson supposedly worked on the film for just over a year, but he didn't make much progress. In 2008, he left Spy Hunter, with the only explanation being that he had lost interest. Why did he lose interest, you may ask? Well, he had already made his ideal quote-unquote car movie with his recently released video game adaptation, Death Race 2. He stated, "I think we've really maxed out our car movie, so I think we've laid down a challenge to anyone else. I think we're now the movie to beat. We've got Bullet, The French Connection, The Italian Job, Mad Max, Ronin, but Death Race 2 is the one to beat." Okay.
All right, players, here we are on the outside of Midway Games here in Chicago.
Just 1 year after Anderson's departure, Midway Studios filed for bankruptcy in May of 2009, and the company began to liquidate its assets. In a $33 million takeover bid, the rights to properties such as Mortal Kombat, Joust, and you guessed it, Spy Hunter, were acquired by Warner Brothers. With the Spy Hunter IP now out of Midway's hands and into Warner's, the film must surely be dead, right? Oh God, it's not dead yet, is it? In 2013, Warner began pre-production on another version of the Spy Hunter film. Mind you, this is 10 years after the film originally began production. Warner tapped Ruben Fleischer, of Venom and Zombieland fame, to direct this time around. Fleischer was a self-admitted huge fan of the original game, and he was excited about creating a brand new James Bond-esque franchise, saying, "I think just the Spy Hunter that is the most badass spy who hunts down rogue spies is a really cool launchpad for an idea, and I hope that we can bring it to life." Well, Fleischer couldn't bring it to life. No news of Spy Hunter would break again until 2015, when Warner announced that another pair of writers would be directing the film's script, making this probably the 7th script rewrite, if I'm adding that up right. There hasn't been any news of Spy Hunter since, with Fleischer currently slated to direct the Uncharted movie in 2021, which no matter how much Tom Holland says is going to happen, I won't believe it until I see it. The Spy Hunter movie should be considered canceled. The franchise is long forgotten and borderline irrelevant, with its last game coming out on the PlayStation Vita in 2012. A Spy Hunter revival just isn't in the cards. But anyway, what do you think about Spy Hunter? Do you think the movie would have been okay? Personally, I think it would have turned out like something like Vin Diesel's Triple X. But hey, it could have been a fun popcorn flick. Thank you for watching, thank you for subscribing, and see you next time.
Fame. Rats. Fame. Rats. Fame.